I wanted a beer and I wanted a glass of wine this weekend, and the temptation to do both of those things almost broke me. But I'm going to share with you my strategies that I used and how I didn't give in to that temptation. So, just to give you a recap, after 4 weeks of being on this 90-day challenge, let me just share the most important metric for me, which is telling me I'm making progress, right? This is the proof that's showing me that I'm moving closer to my vision and that my process is working. So the proof here for me is I actually have added a couple of tallies to the spreadsheet that I'm tracking. And you can see over the course of the last 4 weeks, I've been in a calorie deficit of just over 30,000 calories. Now, if you agree with the argument that 3,500 calories equals 1 pound of fat loss or 1 pound of fat, then by this math, over the last 4 weeks, I'm actually down by 8.7 pounds. And if I look at the scale, I can see that the scale is showing me I went from 192 down to 179 this morning, which tells me that's like 13 pounds. Now, you might say, hey, why do those numbers jive? And the big reason for me to explain this is that I know the first 5 or 6 pounds were simply water loss. And the reality is that my waistline is shrinking. And I went down another ½ inch this week from on my waist size. So I'm down 3.5 inches around my waist from when I started 4 weeks ago. So those are two huge success moments. The data is showing me that I'm moving forward. So let me tell you why this process almost got broken this week and why I almost gave in. So when I talk about my VIP process for resilience, if you haven't heard what that is, this is something I learned as an Ironman triathlete 20 years ago, and it just works every time I throw myself into a situation, whether it's personally, professionally, socially, or financially, doesn't matter. It always works. So the vision was, in the course of 90 days, if I followed a process, could I measure the metrics and would I actually lose 20 pounds? And right now, clearly, I'm on a path to achieve that goal. But I also know that the closer I get to my ideal body weight, which I think is 170 pounds, the more my body's going to try to fight back and resist that. So this week, I ran into a couple of, I'm going to call them challenges, and this is how I overcame them. The first was on Friday night. My wife and I went out to a new brewery that just opened up last week on the water's edge of Lake Ontario. It's absolutely stunning view right across the lake to Toronto. It was a beautiful Friday evening, and the beer looked to be fantastic. But before we went out there, I looked online to see if they had any non-alcoholic beer, which I would have happily had. I don't mind the calories. I just have made a promise to myself I'm not going to drink for 90 days. And they didn't. So then I brought a can of my non-alcoholic beer with me. And when we were waiting in line, I saw the owner was there behind the bar helping serve. And I just said, hey, do you have a non-alcoholic beer? And they said no. And I said, well, listen, man, I'm on this 90-day program. I can't drink, and I'm 1 month in. Would you mind if I grabbed a can of non-alcoholic beer from my car and brought it out? He said, hey, man, no problem. We're going to have non-alcoholic beer soon. I don't have it now. I understand. Do what you need to do. So I had a strategy. It felt a little bit weird going to my car and getting a can of beer. But I will tell you, as I was sitting at the table, other people saw that can of beer and said, oh, did you buy that non-alcoholic beer here? And I said, no, I brought it. I talked to the owner. It's all cool. They're going to be getting some in. They don't have it yet. So it was just like my uncomfortableness of bringing something outside into a beer garden that wasn't from them. I checked, I asked, I made sure it was okay. That was the hurdle that I had to get over mentally. But then I was just amazed at how many people actually were looking for that option as well. So I'll be sure to feed that or give that feedback back to the owner. The second thing is, I love to cook. And I love to challenge myself to create nice meals for my wife and myself. And this is something that goes back to when I was doing Ironman training, because 20 years ago, our kids were in their early, like between 10 and 15 years old, between the two of them. And my wife was busy being a mom, working, doing all the things that she was doing. And because I was a consultant, I had more of a flexible schedule. And because I was doing Ironman training, I was really in tune to what I was eating. and I was measuring things and I was counting calories and I was really on track of things. And I just, hey, let me take over the food, because if I can take that stress off your plate, then, I get what I need, the family gets what they need, everybody's going to be happy. And that just started to develop a passion for cooking, to the point where if I ever go to a fine dining restaurant, I look at what what the meal is that I get, and then I try to deconstruct it in my brain, and quite often I'll try to make it within 2 or 3 days at home. And that's kind of a fun challenge that I have. But right now here in Southern Ontario, it is August. We've got a whole vegetable garden planted, and right now tomatoes, we have so many different types of heirloom tomatoes and cherry tomatoes. I decided that I was going to make a couple of Mediterranean meals this weekend. And maybe if you like this, I'll share some more meals. Maybe I'll share the recipe for how I made these things. But what I love about AI right now is I can go to either ChatGPT, Claude, or Google Gemini, and I simply say, hey, look, I'm trying to make a Mediterranean meal, authentic Mediterranean meal. These are the proteins I have in my home. This is what's growing in my garden currently. Give me some ideas. And we'll bounce back and forth, and it'll say, do you have this ingredient or that ingredient? And quite often, if it's looking for a heavy cream, I say, well, I've got non-fat Greek yogurt in the fridge. How can we make this work? And it ended up giving me 2 amazing dishes. One was a shrimp skewer dish on Greek rice with fresh beans from our garden, fresh tomatoes. It was awesome. And then the other was a braised beef stew, if you want to call it that was braised in a tomato-based beef stock after the beef had been browned. It was slow roasted for 3 hours at like 225 in the oven. And beside that, I had a variety of our cherry tomatoes also braising for the same 3 hours. And then at the end, I blended the two together to make an amazing meal. But as often has it, we're sitting here salivating, thinking about this meal. We can smell it. You can smell the rosemary and the garlic and everything coming out of the oven. It was awesome. But I also know I have some pretty incredible red wines in my wine cellar right now. And it is killing me. It was killing me not to open up a bottle of red wine. And I thought, so I immediately got onto, I think it was either Claude or ChatGPT, and I said, hey, I'm in the middle of this 90-day fast, and will this throw me off track? I'm making such good progress. Is this my reward for a month of good stuff, or where do I sit? And it started saying, you know what? Yeah, it's not going to throw you off. It started saying, okay, yeah, you can do that. You and Robin can treat yourself and have a reward. You've done really good for 4 weeks. It isn't going to throw you off. But I sat there, and it's funny how now I'm talking to and reasoning with AI about whether or not it's okay to cheat on my diet. And I know it's only 90 days. And as Rob and I were driving through Font Hill yesterday, which is another beautiful, it's a short hills. We live right beside the short hills. Beautiful part of Niagara. It's wine country. There's horse farms. It's just gorgeous. And as we're driving through, we're seeing these incredible homes. And I looked at Rob and I says, all I can imagine is I'm looking at this beautiful home in the country, in the woods, just an amazing setting. All I can think about is what kind of wine do they have? And are they standing there in their kitchen just looking out at the view, enjoying a glass of wine? I said, I don't know why. For me, it's wine. It moved from beer to wine these days, where I really, it's the one refined thing that I crave. But so then I went back to ChatGPT and said, nope, my wife is holding me accountable. I'm holding myself accountable. That's not a hard thing for me to do. But I didn't want one of the non-alcoholic beers. I said, this is what I've got in my fridge. I've got plain sparkling water. I've got tons of fresh fruit. I've got, what else did I put in there? Oh, it wanted to know if I had pomegranate, because it said pomegranate would have complemented the balsamic vinegar and the braised beef and the braised tomatoes. And what the recipe it ended up giving me for dinner to drink was a sparkling water with muddled blueberries, balsamic vinegar. Yeah, that's all it was in it. And when you muddle that, and a mint leaf, and you muddle that around, you put the mint leaf in it, it was like this amazing cocktail that was non-alcoholic that immediately forgot about having wine. And I think it's just because I needed something to drink that wasn't water to make myself feel good about the meal that I was having. It just sort of complemented and completed the meal. So I'll tell you right now, this is a tool I didn't have 20 years ago, but having something like ChatGPT or Claude or Google Gemini to help you create a meal based on what is in your kitchen, to me, I thought that was just a fantastic way of using AI in my everyday life. So something to share with you. So one of the biggest challenges that I have continued to struggle with is the fasting. And it's not about the mornings, it's always about the evenings. And it's about eating something at 8 or 9 o'clock at night because I know I'm already in like 1,000 calorie deficit most days because I do two 1 hour walks and at least one workout during the day, which usually puts me, if I'm following this, 1,500 to 2,000 a day calorie meal plan, that's sustaining me quite easily. It's just, you get the munchies after dinner if you're sitting down, and quite often if Robin makes something, sometimes she makes like protein bars and power bars and like good stuff, but I eat it. And I know that just like, I know I'm okay on the calorie side, but I have to wonder how it's interrupting my intermittent fasting and how detrimental that is. So my big plan, my strategy, hopefully, is to get my intermittent fasting in the evening on track. The morning, not a problem. The evening, that's where I kind of run into trouble. So if you've got any suggestions for how to curb that snacking behavior, leave those in the comments. Would love to hear about that from you. And by the way, if you're new to this channel, I'm Dave. I'm a consultant. I'm 60 years old. I'm also an Ironman triathlete, have been for the past 20 years. I'm just trying to grow a community of folks here who can relate to what I'm going through. Lost my job last year in the spring, ended up starting a marketing agency. I'm a consultant basically, and I help wineries in my area. That's the niche I've narrowed down to. I help them with their AI tools and technology, and I use High Level on the back end to run all that. And it turns out there's a real need for that. So if you're a consultant, if you find yourself in the same shoes where, you find yourself, maybe you got let go from your job, you're not ready to retire, you're looking for some monthly recurring revenue, subscribe to the channel. Maybe you'll find something here that could work for you. Hope so. That's my intent anyway. So what I'd love to find out this week from you is if you are currently following along in this program. I don't care whether you're following along in real time or you've just discovered this and it's been 5 years and you're just jumping into it now. The same rules apply. I'm trying to leave clues as to how I'm being successful, how I'm using AI to help take an old training program, which was my Ironman training program, and get me recommitted to paying attention to my diet so that I can feel good and look good and still be able to do the things at 70 in 10 years time that I could do when I was 30. And that's kind of cool because right now, I'm doing things that most 30-year-olds can't do and loving every second of it. So why shouldn't I? Actually, I read a really great quote yesterday. It was on LinkedIn and it was from another coach talking about, men in their 60s to 70s, and he coaches these guys to success. And he said he read this quote from Clint Eastwood, and it was something to the effect, actually, I got it on my phone. I think I took a snap of that. Maybe I didn't get it. But anyway, he just said, you can't avoid the old man, but you don't have to let him in. And I just thought that was really telling because, hey, you can't avoid getting older. We're all getting older, but it doesn't mean you have to let the old man in the door. And the old man is the guy that makes excuses for everything that he can't do because he's letting old age take over his life and create a new sedentary lifestyle for him. Hey, I've got a rest. I will tell you, multi-sport has been my fountain of youth. If you buy into that, fantastic. It has kept me feeling young, energetic. I'm doing things with 30-year-olds that most of them cannot do themselves. And I think that's pretty cool. So if you're following the channel, you're going to see, here's the continuity. And I want to make sure that you guys get this. I put out videos about my business and trying to help new consultants land clients in the sales and marketing side of things that I do through High Level. But I'm also trying to share with you that at 60, and I'm going to be 60 in November, so that's 2 months away, I can do things that, again, most 30-year-olds can't do. And it's because I keep investing in my health and well-being. And I'm not saying I'm doing it perfectly. But what I am saying is I'm paying attention. I'm following proven recipes from other people. I'm getting ahead of this age thing. And yeah, I just think if that's something that you're interested in, let me know. Eventually, people will find us here and we'll be a nice, tight knit community that can grow older gracefully together. And when I say gracefully, I don't mean in an old folks home. I mean doing youthful activities. That is my vision. My vision is that at 70, 80, 90, I'll continue to be able to do youthful things well into my later years in life. And here's the irony. My dad, who passed away from Lewy body dementia, I think now almost 10 years ago, the last 10 years of his life were absolutely horrific. And I won't get into that here. But my dad had my sister and I when he was around 23. And he always said he had kids at a younger age so that he could enjoy them as he got older. The irony is that as he got older, his lifestyle, his diet all contributed to fuel chronic disease in his life. That caught up with him, not the youthful enthusiasm. And I saw what was a healthy man get destroyed, both physically and mentally. And that was horrible to go through. But I will say that to my kids and to my wife, the biggest gift my father ever gave me was the wake-up call to pay attention, because I don't want to end up like that. And that is such a strong motivator. If you've ever had somebody live in a nursing home for 10 years when they shouldn't have been there longer than 2, you will know what I'm talking about. It is not a pleasant situation. And I will look back at that, and the fond memory I take away from that is that if my dad did give me a parting gift, it was to sit up and pay attention. And that's what I've done for the last, say, 15 years since he started going into his decline. So that's what this channel is about. It's honest. I think it's one of the most honest things that I can put on YouTube. Everybody says be authentic. This is my authentic self. I'm sharing clues on how to lead a better life, how to create more revenue for yourself if you need that into your retiring years. And if you've got a comment about that, just go ahead and share it. You'll find next week's video here and recap into week number 5. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you then. What do you think, Ralph? Was that a good one? Oh, was it super boring? I don't know. I think it was a good video. What do you think? You don't look impressed.